The morning began with a haunting silence in Genoa City, one that seemed to settle over the town like a thick fog after a storm. Sharon stood in the Crimson Lights coffee house, staring out the window, her reflection pale and distant against the glass. She hadn't slept properly in days. Her son Noah had been gone for weeks now, killed under mysterious and brutal circumstances that left everyone shaken. The police had called it an ongoing investigation, but Sharon had seen enough of those to know what that meant. No answers, no closure, and no peace. The ache in her chest was constant, but underneath it was a fire, a determination to uncover the truth herself. She wasn't going to let her son's death become another cold case in a town filled with buried secrets. The clues she had were scattered and confusing, but she had been quietly piecing them together. The night Noah died, he had told Mariah over the phone that he'd discovered something huge, something that could change everything. That was the last anyone heard from him. The next morning, his car was found abandoned near the edge of the woods just outside Genoa City, the passenger door open, his phone shattered on the ground, and no sign of him. It was only days later that his body was discovered a few miles away, down by the riverbank. The police suggested it might have been an accident, but Sharon knew better. Noah was careful, thoughtful, and far too smart to end up dead by coincidence. Nick had begged her to let the authorities handle it, but Sharon couldn't sit still. She had lost too much in her life to stand by helplessly now. Every instinct in her screamed that someone in Genoa City knew what happened to her son, and they were covering it up. She started retracing Noah's last days, visiting the people he'd been in contact with. His art studio was her first stop. The space still smelled like paint and turpentine, his canvases lined against the walls, unfinished masterpieces staring back at her. She ran her fingers over one of his last works, a dark, abstract swirl of colors that seemed to tell a story of chaos and fear. Hidden in one corner was something strange, a small painted figure that looked eerily familiar. It resembled a woman, long hair, dark eyes, but the face was smeared as if Noah had tried to erase it. Sharon snapped a photo of it, her heart pounding. Who was she? She went to see Tessa next, knowing that Noah's ex-girlfriend might have answers. Tessa looked devastated when Sharon arrived. She was trembling, her eyes red from crying. "I wanted to tell you," she said softly, her voice breaking. "Noah came to see me the day before he died. He said he'd found something dangerous, something about a deal Victor was involved in, but he wouldn't give details. He told me he was scared, Sharon. He thought someone was watching him." Sharon froze, her breath catching in her throat. The mention of Victor sent a chill through her. Victor Newman had always been a powerful, intimidating figure, even when he claimed to protect family. If Noah had stumbled onto one of Victor's corporate secrets, that could explain everything. Later that evening, Sharon went to Newman Enterprises, ignoring Nick's calls begging her to stop. She cornered Victor in his office, her voice shaking with fury. "What did Noah find out, Victor?" she demanded. "What did he know that got him killed?" Victor's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something behind his eyes, guilt, or maybe annoyance. "You're distraught, Sharon," he said coldly. "You're imagining things. Noah's death was a tragedy, but don't start blaming people who loved him." Sharon's hands clenched into fists. "I know you," she hissed. "You'd do anything to protect this company, even if it means silencing the truth." She left before he could respond, but his silence said more than words could. That night, Sharon couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following her. As she drove home, she kept glancing at her rearview mirror, catching glimpses of headlights that seemed to stay just a little too close. She turned down side streets trying to lose them, but the car followed. Finally, she pulled into the old industrial lot near the river, her heart hammering. She jumped out, shouting into the darkness, "Who's there?" But no one answered. The sound of footsteps echoed from behind the shipping containers. Sharon pulled out her phone, but before she could call anyone, the lights of the other car went out. Silence. The only thing she could hear was her own breathing and the river rushing nearby. She backed away slowly and ran to her car, locking the doors and speeding off. By the next morning, Sharon's fear had hardened into determination. She visited Chance Chancellor, hoping the detective would finally take her seriously. Chance looked at her sympathetically, but his tone was careful. "Sharon, I've been looking into Noah's case off the record. There's something strange. His phone data was wiped clean, and the security cameras near the river were tampered with. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Sharon's eyes widened. So it was murder. Chance nodded grimly. I can't prove it yet, but you're right to trust your gut. Just be careful. Whoever you're up against doesn't want to be found. Later, Sharon met with Mariah and Faith at home. The tension was thick. Mariah was furious, blaming herself for not doing more. Faith was terrified their mother would end up next. Sharon tried to reassure them, but deep down she knew she was walking a dangerous line. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying everything Tessa had said, the painting she found, and Victor's evasive reaction. When she closed her eyes she saw Noah's face, his eyes pleading for justice. She whispered into the darkness, I'll find who did this to you, baby. I promise. 2 days later, Sharon got a call from a blocked number. The voice on the other end was distorted but unmistakably female. Stop digging, Sharon, or you'll end up like him. The line went dead before she could respond. Her blood ran cold, but instead of backing off, she pressed harder. She remembered the painting again, the faceless woman Noah had tried to erase. That had to mean something. She returned to the studio and searched through his sketchbooks. Hidden between pages, she found a note written in Noah's handwriting. If something happens to me, look for her. She's closer than you think. Beneath it was a drawing of a necklace, a silver pendant shaped like a teardrop. It didn't take long for Sharon to notice that same necklace around someone's neck. Audra Charles. She had been working closely with Noah before his death, helping him organize a gallery event. Sharon arranged to meet her at Society under the pretense of discussing a memorial for Noah. As they sat across from each other, Sharon's eyes flicked to the necklace. That's a beautiful piece, she said casually. Audra smiled thinly. It was a gift, she replied. From a friend. Sharon leaned forward slightly. From Noah. Audra hesitated, then laughed softly. No, but he did admire it. There was something in her tone that didn't sit right. Sharon felt her pulse quicken. After the meeting, Sharon followed Audra out to the parking lot. She watched as Audra got into her car and made a call, her expression serious. Sharon crept closer, staying out of sight, and barely caught the words. She's getting too close. Sharon's stomach dropped. She fumbled for her phone to record it, but a loud noise made Audra turn. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither moved. Then Audra sped off, leaving Sharon trembling beside her car. That night Sharon went to Chance again, showing him what she'd recorded. Though faint, the audio captured Audra's voice clearly enough to raise suspicion. Chance agreed to look deeper into her background. What he found was shocking. Audra had been in contact with an anonymous shell corporation tied to Newman Enterprises' offshore accounts. And Noah had recently uncovered a suspicious money trail connected to those same accounts. It was enough to suggest that Noah's death wasn't random, it was a cover-up. Sharon's heart broke all over again, but now she had direction. Over the next few days, Sharon noticed more signs she was being watched. Strange cars parked near her house, her phone ringing with no one on the line, and one morning, she found a note taped to her door. You were warned. Nick begged her to stay with him for safety, but Sharon refused. I can't hide, Nick. If I back down now, they win. He looked at her with both admiration and fear. You're going to get yourself killed. One evening, Sharon drove to confront Audra directly. She found her alone in her apartment, packing a suitcase. Going somewhere? Sharon asked coldly as she stepped inside. Audra froze, then forced a smile. I have business out of town. Sharon shook her head. You killed him, didn't you? Or helped cover it up? Audra's smile faltered. You don't know what you're talking about. Sharon stepped closer. I know enough. I know you were working with someone powerful. Was it Victor? Or someone else pulling your strings? Audra's eyes flashed. You're out of your depth, Sharon. Walk away while you still can. Before Sharon could respond, there was a loud crash. The window shattered as a shot rang out. Audra screamed, diving to the floor. Sharon hit the ground beside her, her ears ringing. When she looked up, the bullet had missed them both, lodging into the wall. By the time the police arrived, the shooter was gone. Audra refused to say anything, but her face was pale, terrified. Chance later told Sharon the attack was meant to silence both of them. Whoever killed Noah is cleaning up loose ends, he warned. In the following days, Audra disappeared without a trace. Sharon was left shaken but undeterred. She started to piece together what little information chance could gather. A network of corporate deception, secret accounts, and someone manipulating events behind the scenes. Then came the biggest shock. Forensic tests revealed the bullet from the apartment matched a weapon owned by Adam Newman. Sharon couldn't believe it. Adam had always been unpredictable, but murder? Still, she knew the Newman family was full of dangerous alliances. When she confronted him, Adam swore he had nothing to do with it. "Someone's setting me up," he insisted. "I tried to warn Noah. He was getting too close." It all started to make sense, the threads connecting Victor, Audra, and Adam. Sharon realized Noah's discovery wasn't just about a business deal. It was about an entire operation involving hidden assets, possibly illegal. Someone within the Newman circle had everything to lose if the truth came out. And now they wanted Sharon gone too. One evening, Sharon received an anonymous text with a location pin and a message. "Come alone if you want the truth." Against her better judgment, she went. The address led her back to the riverbank where Noah's body had been found. The night was cold, the wind whispering through the trees. She called out, "Who's there?" From the shadows stepped a man she didn't expect, Victor himself. "I told you to stay out of this," he said quietly. Sharon stared at him, trembling. "So it was you." Victor shook his head. "I didn't kill Noah. But he found something he shouldn't have, something that could destroy everything I built. I tried to protect him, but I was too late." His eyes looked pained, but Sharon didn't believe him. "You don't protect Victor. You control." Before she could press further, headlights appeared behind her. A black SUV rolled up and men stepped out, faces hidden. Sharon turned to run, but one grabbed her. Victor shouted for them to stop, but a struggle broke out. Sharon kicked and screamed, managing to break free just as Chance's sirens blared in the distance. The men fled, leaving Victor standing there, caught in the chaos. Chance rushed to Sharon, helping her to her feet. She was shaking but alive. By Monday morning, word spread across Genoa City. Sharon had narrowly escaped what could have been a fatal encounter. Victor was questioned but not charged, though the investigation into the corporate conspiracy deepened. Sharon sat in crimson lights, exhausted but resolute. She looked at Noah's picture on her phone, tears filling her eyes. "They tried to silence me, but I'm not stopping," she whispered. "You deserve justice, and I'll make sure you get it." Outside, the same black SUV passed slowly by, its tinted windows reflecting the cafe lights. Sharon didn't see it, but the danger wasn't over. Somewhere in the darkness, the real killer was still watching, waiting for the next move. Genoa City had seen many tragedies, but this one had just begun to unravel. And Sharon, grieving but fierce, was ready to face whatever came next. The air in Genoa City had taken on a particular oppressive quality, a chilling blend of grief and unspoken fear that seemed to seep into the very foundations of its most prominent buildings. The recent brutal murder of Noah Newman had left a scar on the community, but for his aunt Sharon Collins, the wound was not something to be mourned passively. It was a summons, a clarion call that echoed in the silent hours of the night, demanding action where the authorities had found only dead ends and frustrating procedural roadblocks. While others attempted to piece their lives back together, to find a new normal in the shadow of such a profound loss, Sharon found herself unable to sit still, her own history with turmoil and survival dictating a different, more dangerous path. She had always been a fixer, a nurturer, the one who believed in the power of truth and confrontation to heal, and now that philosophy was being put to its ultimate test. The police, for all their resources, seemed to be moving in slow motion, their investigation mired in evidence logs and alibi confirmations, and every day that passed without an arrest felt like a personal insult to Noah's memory, a betrayal of the vibrant life that had been extinguished. This restless energy began to manifest in small, almost imperceptible ways at first. She started spending more time at the station, under the guise of bringing coffee and support to Nick and Victoria, but her eyes were always scanning, always absorbing the details of the investigation that were casually discussed in her presence. She would linger near Detective Chancellor's desk, her ears straining to catch fragments of phone conversations, the names of persons of interest, any tidbit of information that hadn't made its way into the official family briefings. It was a subtle shift, from grieving relative to active investigator. But the transition was fueled by a potent cocktail of love, guilt, and a simmering rage that surprised even her. She remembered Noah as a boy, his easy smile, the way he looked at her with such unconditional trust, and the thought that his killer was walking free, possibly even walking the same streets, sharing the same air, was an unbearable torment. She began to keep a journal, not of her feelings but of facts. Mariah had offhandedly mentioned an argument Noah had been involved in a week or so before his death, a tense exchange with a low-level business associate of Adam's at a corporate gala. It was the kind of thing the police had likely noted and filed away, one of dozens of such minor conflicts in the life of a Newman. But to Sharon it was a thread, and she found her fingers itching to pull it. Using her deep knowledge of the city's social labyrinth, she began making discreet inquiries, calling in old favors from her days running Crimson Lights, leveraging connections that the police would never even know existed. She met with a nervous bartender who remembered the altercation, a waitress who overheard a threatening tone. Each small piece of information felt like a victory, a step closer to the truth, and it emboldened her, blinding her to the risks she was taking. She was no longer just Sharon the supportive ex-aunt. She was Sharon the avenger, and the persona was dangerously seductive. Unbeknownst to her, this very activity was drawing attention. In a city where everyone is connected and secrets are a currency, her questions were not going unnoticed. The killer, who had been watching the investigation from the shadows with a nervous, paranoid eye, had sources of their own. A whispered warning from a contact at the Genoa City Athletic Club, a cryptic text message about the Newman aunt asking too many questions. These small reports began to form a pattern. The killer, who had believed the heat was dying down, who had started to feel the sweet relief of having gotten away with murder, now felt a fresh wave of cold dread. Sharon Collins was not a trained detective. She was a civilian, a loose cannon. Her methods were unpredictable, her network unconventional. She was a wild card, and in the carefully calculated game of cat and mouse the killer was playing, a wild card was the most dangerous element of all. She was becoming a problem, and problems in the killer's grim worldview needed to be eliminated. The morning of Monday, the 27th, dawned with a false sense of clarity for Sharon. A breakthrough, or what she perceived as one, had come in the form of a forgotten security camera from a building across the street from the alley where Noah was found. The police had initially dismissed its angle as useless, but Sharon, poring over public records and city planning maps in a late-night frenzy at the public library, theorized it might have captured the reflection of a vehicle in a nearby office window. She had managed, through a convoluted series of calls, to secure a meeting with the building's security supervisor, a man named Carl, who was sympathetic to her cause and had agreed to let her review the footage before he handed over the official copy to the GCPD later that afternoon. She saw this as her one chance to find something, anything, that the professionals had missed. She told Nick she was running errands, a necessary lie that settled heavily in her stomach. She could feel his protective gaze on her, his own grief a tangible force, but she convinced herself that the end, finding Noah's killer, justified the means. The truth would heal them all, she was sure of it. The meeting with Carl was set for his office after hours at 7 p.m., when the building would be largely empty. As she prepared to leave, a strange unease settled over her, a primal instinct that whispered for her to stay home, to call Nick, to hand this information over to chance. She dismissed it as nerves, the natural anxiety of stepping so far outside her comfort zone. She was doing this for Noah, for Nick, for the entire family. The thought steeled her resolve. She drove to the downtown office building, the setting sun casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to claw at her car. The streets were quieter than usual, the normal hustle of the city giving way to an eerie, watchful silence. Parking her car in the adjacent lot, she took a deep breath, clutching her bag containing her notes and a digital recorder, and walked towards the service entrance Carl had instructed her to use, her footsteps echoing loudly in the concrete cavern of the parking structure. Meanwhile, across town, a chain of events was unfolding that would seal her fate. Chance Chancellor, finally receiving a warrant, was preparing to collect that very same security footage himself. A tip from an unrelated investigation had mentioned the camera's potential, corroborating what his own team had only just reevaluated. He called Nick to give him an update, his voice tight with cautious optimism. Nick, in turn, tried to call Sharon, wanting to share the sliver of hope, only to get her voicemail. A flicker of concern ignited in his chest. He called Mariah, who hadn't seen her. He called Faith, who said her mom had mentioned something about following a lead but was vague on the details. The flicker became a flame of dread. Nick's mind, sharpened by a lifetime of crises, began to connect the dots. Sharon's intense focus, her secretive behavior of late, her unwavering belief that she could find answers where others had failed. With a sinking heart, he called Chance back, his voice urgent, demanding to know the location of the security footage. When Chance told him, the dread solidified into pure, cold terror. He knew with a certainty that felt like a physical blow where Sharon had gone. Inside the building, the atmosphere was unnervingly still. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, bleaching the color from the linoleum floors and beige walls. Carl, a kindly older man with a grandfatherly demeanor, greeted her warmly and led her to a small windowless security office filled with monitors showing flickering black and white images of empty hallways and silent elevators. He inserted a thumb drive and brought up the footage from the night of the murder. For nearly an hour, they scanned through the grainy images, the timestamp ticking forward with agonizing slowness. The reflection in the office window was there, just as Sharon had theorized, but it was distorted, a shimmering smear of light and dark. They were both leaning close to the screen, their concentration absolute, when a noise from the hallway outside made them both jump. It was the distinct sound of the stairwell door closing, heavy and final. Carl frowned. "Security sweeps not for another hour," he muttered, getting up to check. He opened the office door and peered out into the empty corridor. "Hello?" he called out. His voice echoed faintly. He turned back to Sharon with a shrug. Must have been the building settling. It wasn't. The killer was already inside. They had been tipped off about Sharon's meeting, the information bought with a hefty sum of cash from a corrupt city employee, who handled building permit applications and had overheard Carl's conversation about the footage. They had used a stolen keycard to access the service entrance, moving with a predatory silence through the familiar blueprint of the building they had meticulously studied. They knew the location of every camera blind spot, the schedule of the lone night watchman. This was not a crime of passion like Noah's murder had been. That had been messy, reactive. This was a calculated execution. As Carl turned back to the monitor, a figure clad in black, face obscured by a hood and a mask, materialized in the doorway. Before either of them could process the threat, before a scream could even form in Sharon's throat, a gun, fitted with a silencer, was raised.